Every decade has its own unique flavor, and the 1980s was no exception. It was a time with a style that remains instantly recognizable, even to younger generations today. But beyond the famous neon colors and bold hairstyles, there were plenty of smaller things that anyone who lived through that era would immediately recall. So to give your memory a nudge, here are 15 things from 1980s Britain that every child experienced or knew. Moments and memories that kids today just wouldn't get. In the 1980s, Saturday mornings were sacred for every British child. The television schedule was limited, and of course there wasn't any streaming at the time. There were just a bunch of channels with a lineup of shows. Shows like Going Leave, Number 73, and Multicolored Swap Shop made Saturday mornings really lively though, since there would be cartoons, music performances, celebrity interviews, and even fun phone-in competitions. Kids would settle in front of the TV in their pajamas with a bowl of their favorite cereal and just sit there for hours. And what made things more fun was that all of your friends watched the same show, so there was something to discuss later. The limited TV choices made these programs more precious, building anticipation that no modern streaming binge can quite replicate. It was a magical ritual that shaped the weekend routine and the culture of childhood in the UK. Speaking of television, there were also the Blue Peter badges. Now, Blue Peter was a children's television program, and every week, millions of children watched the show, which had challenges, DIY projects, and charity campaigns. The Blue Peter badge was something kids dreamed of earning, which could be earned by sending in a clever letter, a drawing, or completing a challenge. It felt like a physical connection to a beloved show. Wearing your badge to school instantly made you popular, and kids even traded stories about how they got theirs. It symbolized creativity, kindness, and community, which made it a cherished memory for those who grew up in that decade. With just a few pennies in your pocket, back then you could get a whole bunch of sweets. Classic favorites included cola bottles, flying saucers, foam shrimps, and black jacks, which were all weighed out carefully by the shopkeeper on those iconic metal scales you probably still remember. The experience of choosing your sweets and the anticipation of the sugar rush made these small purchases a highlight of the day. Pocket money was spent carefully, and a visit to the shop wasn't just about treats. It also taught kids about budgeting, choice, and socializing with the local shopkeeper and other kids. These penny sweets left a lasting impression, their flavors forever associated with childhood summers and simple pleasures. Few things defined childhood in the UK during the 80s, quite like the Raleigh Burner BMX. This bike had some really bold colors and a distinctive design, which turned it into an absolute icon. Kids rode them everywhere, racing down streets, pulling off simple stunts, or just cruising with friends. Many added playing cards to the spokes to make that motorbike-like sound, which was cool in itself. Owning a burner was a source of pride and sometimes jealousy from peers, as these bikes weren't cheap and symbolized a kind of growing independence. The BMX culture of the 80s combined sport, play, and fashion in a way that few toys did. Then there were those Panini football stickers. Their arrival during football season was an awesome event, and opening a fresh pack and peeling off the shiny stickers of players was a thrill like no other. The playgrounds became marketplaces for swapping duplicates, with kids negotiating fiercely to fill their albums. It was a lot of fun trying to get the whole collection. Football was, and still is, a passion in the UK, and those Panini sticker albums were a tangible way for kids to connect with their heroes and their teams off the pitch. The frustration of missing just one elusive sticker and the pride of finally completing the album are memories shared by an entire generation. For many children in the 1980s, school milk was delivered in little glass bottles or small cartons, and they were normally had before or after break time. The bottles were usually cold, sometimes too cold in winter, and occasionally warm and unpleasant in summer. The paper straws were another hallmark. Thin, bendy, and prone to sogginess by the time you'd finish your milk. Drinking your milk was both healthy and something to do with your buds. The taste of that school milk, combined with the slightly waxy feel of the paper straw, is a surprisingly vivid memory for many. Everyone knows the unpredictability of the weather in Britain, and it was the same during the 80s. But back then, instead of PlayStations, kids would often go inside and play Subbuteo. This tabletop football game required skill, patience, where you had to flick tiny plastic footballers to make them glide across the cloth pitch. Setting up the teams, choosing formations, and imagining the crowds made the game come alive, despite being stuck indoors. Some kids took it seriously, even investing in extra accessories like floodlights and stands to recreate entire matches from their favorite teams. Subbuteo wasn't just a pastime, it was a way to bond with siblings and friends when the rain kept everyone inside. The game's tactile nature and strategic challenge made it a cherished classic and made it one that kids remember fondly as part of the quieter moments of their childhood. Wham bars were a staple of the 1980s British sweet shop. They had a fizzy, sherbet-like quality that made them both fun and pretty addictive to eat. Alongside Wham bars, sherbet fountains were another classic treat. These were long tubes filled with sweet sherbet powder and a black licorice stick to dip inside. Kids loved dipping it into the powder and often made quite a mess of it too. These sweets were sold at newsagents and corner shops and were often bought with pocket money on the way home from school or at the weekend. Their distinctive flavors and textures became embedded in the collective memory of a generation, evoking instant nostalgia for anyone who grew up in the 80s in the UK. Before PlayStations and Xboxes, the ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64 were the gateways into the world of home computing and gaming for many British children. These computers became common in households, and games could be loaded from cassette tapes. They were pretty slow, and you had to be patient for them to load up because otherwise you'd have to start all over again. Games like Manic Miner, Jet Set Willy, and Elite were especially popular during the time, and they were really fun too. The ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64 remain iconic symbols of 1980s British childhood tech. Grange Hill was a really popular children's drama, but one of the most memorable moments was that song that came with the Just Say No campaign. It was a part of an anti-drug storyline that made a huge impact on young viewers, and the catchy song and dance that it showed were part of the reason why it was so impactful. Kids who grew up then remember awkwardly singing or mimicking the dance at school, which was always fun to do. Grange Hill helped shape a generation's attitude toward drugs, making it a landmark series in British television history and a touchstone of 1980s childhood. Every winter in the UK, the animated short film The Snowman came around, and boy was it loved. Based on Raymond Briggs's book, its gentle, wordless storytelling and haunting, beautiful music created a magical atmosphere that still holds up pretty well. Families would gather around the television in the evenings as the silent story of a boy building a snowman who comes to life unfolded on screen. The Snowman wasn't just a film. It was an annual ritual that evoked the wonder of Christmas and the fleeting magic of childhood winter nights, making it one of the most enduring images of 1980s Britain. Before safety rules in schoolyards, there was the British Bulldog game. The game was simple as one child stood in the middle of the playground while the others ran from one side to the other, trying not to be caught and tackled by the Bulldog. It was rough, chaotic, and often resulted in torn clothes and scraped knees. But that was part of the fun. Teachers mostly frowned on it for being too rough, but it was an unmissable chance to blow off steam for the kids and show off their speed and strength. British Bulldog perfectly captures a time before health and safety rules changed the way kids played. Opal fruits were the original chewy, tangy, fruit-flavored sweets that later became known as Starburst. Their bright colors and punchy flavors made them a lunchtime favorite for many 1980s kids. Alongside them, Spangles were another sweet shop staple. Individually wrapped, colorful, and slightly fizzing, they were the perfect pocket treat. Both sweets were sold in corner shops and newsagents, often bought with pocket money or as a reward for good behavior. Though Opal fruits have since been renamed and Spangles disappeared, the taste and feel of these sweets are instantly nostalgic for those who remember them. Their distinctive flavors, chewy textures, and brightly colored wrappers are tied to memories of childhood indulgence and simple pleasures of the era. Before digital newspapers and smartphones, many British children earned pocket money by delivering newspapers in their neighborhood. Being a paper boy or paper girl meant waking up early, often in cold or wet weather, carrying heavy bags of newspapers and carefully placing them on doorsteps or through letterboxes. It was one of the first jobs many kids had and taught responsibility, time management, and the value of earning money. The distinct smell of newsprint, the early morning quiet, and the pride of completing a paper round are all part of the vivid memories shared by children growing up in the 1980s Britain. The sound of an ice cream van winding down the street was the soundtrack of summer in 1980s Britain. Recognizable tunes like Green Sleeves or O Sole Mio signaled the arrival of cold treats on hot days. Children would race outside when they heard the jingle to get some sweet, sweet ice cream. It was also pretty fun when you met your neighborhood friends and got to hang out while eating. For many, that jingle instantly conjures up the smells, tastes, and feelings of British summers past. And that's it for today's trip down memory lane. Give it a like if it brought back some memories of your youth, and don't forget to subscribe for more nostalgia. See you next time.